All right, we are recording, so we'll call the meeting to order at 9:19 a.m. and that flag up. All right, perfect. Pledge allegiance.
The flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America,
States of America, and to the
and to the
republic for which is
which stands one nation,
one nation under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we've got approval of the meeting minutes. We've got the 126 and we've got, so we have two. We have the 126 and then we have the 2-2. I think for the 126 ones, that was the one that I think Jeff was.
I have to abstain on the
on.
126, so you'll have to do that as two
And
separate.
yeah, so let's do. Let's start with get a motion to do the 126 ones. Somebody like to make
All
that
right,
motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to accept as written the minutes of meeting for 1/26/2024.
Okay. Jeff, do you want to second on that?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on 126/24
No.
minutes?
No.
Okay. Anybody else, anything? There's no public here, I think, at this time, so. All right, let's call that vote then. All in favor of the 126/24?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and opposed and abstentions?
Aye,
We have
yes.
one. Yep. So that passes 2-0-1. So if we could get a motion for the to put the 2/24.
All right, I'll make the motion to accept the minutes of the meeting as written for the meeting held on February 2nd, 2024.
Do we have a second on that? Okay. So is there any discussion on the 2/24 minutes?
I don't have any.
And Jeff, anything on your end?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. And anybody else, staff, consultants? And then the next one, is there any comments public? I don't think we have any public that is on here. And all right. So we will go for calling a vote on that. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right, so item number 3, the vestibule and roofs. If we want to take up the vestibules first on that one, give an update. I don't know if Sal wants to cover that part. I know they've been dealing with PA or Mark either way, but there's definitely been some progress, which is great.
I was just was having trouble finding the button. I had a couple of
Okay.
windows open there. So the vestibules, Mike Testani and I had a online discussion with Ella Sun, who's the director up at the grants office, along with Michelle Dixon, who is one of the grants reviewers. What they had told us was that there was a recent change in the law and that security projects are no longer under the umbrella of non-priority applications, and I have to put in a priority project application, which is not a big deal. In the meantime, they issued us by email notice that they've given us project numbers. So they've accepted the application that I haven't completed online is basically what that's saying. And we can schedule our PCR meeting, and that'll take place. We'll schedule that on Monday. The woman that takes care of scheduling is off this week, so we'll get in line for a PCR review of the project. In the meantime, we're still bidding as we had done before, as off of the HVAC project number as non-reimbursables, and we'll roll that under a state contractor, and we're proceeding the same way. But the application is going through. It's a project that they want to help foster, although the way they go about it is kind of slow. But we made progress. So we have our project numbers, which is important for the documentation. And hopefully in the next week or so, we have our PCR reviews of the vestibules and a full thumbs up from the state.
Okay, so that's as I had interpreted. Then, yeah, you're getting into some of their procedural pieces, which I think you know best out of probably everybody on here. But it's allowing us. I mean, we were able to at least kind of keep this thing moving based upon them
Yes.
budging what they're sort of tentatively sort of accepting in that manner. And then
Correct.
they'll roll it under this, and now that explains a little more as to why we run into the issue. So, so that's a couple more steps, but good news, because that had been holding that, the letter. I mean, there were a couple pieces that were starting to kind of make us a bit nervous here that seem to have alleviated themselves over the last since the beginning of the week. So thank you for your the extra time trying to piece together there.
Yeah, no,
it's ever-evolving
it's always
target.
interesting on how they can change the process. So
Yep.
got to be nimble and work with it.
So, does anybody else have anything vestibule wise?
Quick question to you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
To Sal, does that affect the reimbursement or anything like that on this project, and then potentially moving forward that you see for other projects?
So so right now we have under the umbrella, there's several project numbers that are reimbursable. We have the project numbers for the vestibules, and they will be reimbursable. We just don't have the final acceptance of even after they do the plan review on the have to explain what a priority project is that it actually is coming under the realm, as silly as it sounds. The vestibules are as small as they are being considered with as being in the same bucket as something like a Mill Hill or Holland Hill, where there was an addition and all that, and the application has to be pulled in, the reviews are done, the state will say, yeah, all your documents are good, but the legislature has not approved your grant yet, so you're at risk. There's never been a priority project that's been rejected by the legislature, although there is a process that is going through every year where priority projects are prioritized into three groups, A, B, and C, based on what they're about. And the legislature theoretically can say, we approve group A, B, but not C because we can't afford it this year. That in my knowledge has never happened. So we won't find that out until the legislature acts on the priority bill sometime next year, next March. So
The
is there
letter from
Go.
COE is written to the legislature middle of December, on or about December 15th. And then the
Right, and
legislature
they
acts on that.
actually acts on that sometime around March.
So
And it's just part of the process, but
Yeah.
we'd end up, for instance, we could do on the roof project and the HVAC projects, we could do requests for partial reimbursement from the state. Say we spent $1 million, we could turn in our bills and say, you know what, we need our percentage to put into our coffers. We would not be able to do that with the vestibules until after the legislature acts, whenever that bill is passed sometime. It's usually around March. As early as February, late April is being very late with it.
That's because it's priority, Sal.
Yeah, yes, it's that Orwellian nomenclature where non-priority projects are handled quicker than the priority projects. Yes.
So there's a chance the HVAC could be done before the vestibules?
Well, the vestibules, and I'll let Amar talk about that. That work was actually intended for summer of 25 anyway. So
Yeah.
we're not really
Yeah.
worried about it.
Right.
Our biggest thing
The
was
HVAC
because of the bidding component, which was a scaling pricing component and getting it wrapped under there from a timeline, not so much that we're going to go and necessarily do it, right? So right away. do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. We don't have any.
We're just trying to scale.
There's a
it's-
procurement phase to the vestibules that we can't do. It's only can be done during the summer, those vestibules. So obviously 24 is very too early because of procurement. So that's definitely a 2025 process for those three schools. But the HVAC work is starting. They all both projects are going to, the HVAC as well as the vestibule, all going to wrap up by the end of summer of 2025. But the HVAC will start now and proceed for the next year and a half, if you will. And
Yeah.
so the vestibules, we'll get into the vestibule, tear it all up in 25 and put it back together in summer of 25.
Yep.
It would seem even procurement wise, I mean, not that you could, I guess you could parse this out a couple different ways, but it almost seems phased wise that you do sort of that other work and then this would be a component on the way out anyways. I mean, I could see the other argument, but it sort of always mapped out in my mind just from a flow that naturally it sort of fit nicely, in that sort of timeline anyways. And I think, the biggest thing was scale, right? Making sure we really got this as part of the main project, that we scaled ourselves. We know that we're
Correct.
that from a cost perspective, we're doing everything we can to try to keep this thing
Right.
really tight and, and then not hold up this, because of that, not hold the bulk of it up because we're already, in crunch window. So
Right.
we can get to that under the other items, but we're finally, the point I think is also that we're finally getting movement and we're making sure we're checking all the boxes for the
Yeah.
state to make sure we get as much as we can back, which is obviously very important. These are, that
Right.
valuable dollars. So, and that we finally got movement after a couple of weeks of struggling through it, and and then a lot of people were a part of that. I know Representative Leeper got involved again. I know that Sal has been staying on top of them. I know this. I think even the superintendent was on a call and was part of it. I think as I understood it. So
Yeah, it's
we're trying. It's been uphill.
in the old days it was a phone call and a 1-minute discussion, and you had the answer. And at worst, the answer was, "Give me 10 minutes and I'll call you back." This took, we filed by January 10th. So here we are, February 9th. It took a month to get to get that one phone call answer, and that's just the nature of the office right now because of their own drama up there.
Yep.
Mr. Becker, can you elaborate a bit on the Jen Leeper portion of that? Was she just trying to help you expedite with the state? I saw it in the minutes from last late January, but I wasn't sure what that entailed.
Yeah, and same, if our former chair, now Board of Ed, member on the call and liaison, Mr. Lee, has any feedback, on that, but he had initially been, I think primarily working with, Representative Weber specifically in the delegation on it, so she's been, so she was sort of the main sort of point of contact that I turned to when it was my turn to need those departments to kind of someone at that level to sort of lean on them. And so it's mostly that when they aren't moving, you got to you can go to, I guess you go to all your delegation, but I think there's one, you could pick one of the delegation to probably, at least initially to make that, to try to lean on them. And that's not uncommon, as I understand in this process, that when there's something big, those are the people that are your conduit. So she had been the person who had been sort of tied to this committee on some of that work earlier. So I had pointed over to her. It was mostly, here's where we're at. We need a response. We're not hearing back. It's been 2 weeks. We're up against the deadline. Can you contact them? Can you, or your office? I have no idea what they do from there, but we need help, and we need it at that sort of state level where they're not writing back and we've got this issue. So specifically on this, and we get into this priority, non-priority, and making a particular deadline, and then you're supposed to get confirmation that it's been accepted in. Sal had a problem the month before where they, where I think if I had it correctly, I mean, we and Sal can elaborate, on the details internally, but we had basically a similar issue the month before with another portion of the project, and they have to sign off in a specific bucket and by certain dates. Otherwise, you have to roll to their next month, which then pushes a whole bunch of other dates back. So it's not we immediately are going to normally, although in this particular instance, they didn't even, and this gets into now that they've changed it to priority, and then you would be able to do this. This is normally non-priority, and then it gets there. But when they went to go do the thing to fit in the deadline, you go in the computer, and all of a sudden the code for this that this would normally fit under didn't even exist. And then they can't get an answer about what to do. So I think I got a phone call from Mr. Papa George, I think probably with him, both of them in the room, and I get a phone call going, hey, just want you to know, now we're trying to figure out what to do with this. And my response back was, put it in as something similar in another coding or a more generalized coding, and just get yourself in by the date with all your documents, so they can, what they basically ended up doing now, which is they moved it, but they technically had it by the date. The last one was a frustrating thing because they had put it in and they had uploaded all the documents, and then they tried to say, oh no, we're going to roll you to another month because you didn't we're missing documents. And Sal's like, Sal does this, right? I mean, you've been doing this for years. You do this all the time, and you're meticulous about it. And in the end, he's like, I have all the backup. I did it.
I have 50 applications in, which is, doesn't sound like a huge number, but it really is, because there's some districts that will do 1 in 10 in one application in 10 years. And it's we're pretty active in the system, and they're in a little bit of a disarray because of the office has been reorganized because there was a bit of a scandal up there, and well, all the pieces haven't settled. Things are still up in the air up there. So,
well, and all state
the skies are cloudy, so it's hard to land.
Yeah. Now they're all suffering from massive numbers of retirements and reorgs, and I mean, there's stuff. This isn't the only department, and sometimes if if there's no, as I understand it, if you can roll a month and you go back and forth and you deal with it, and if your back's against the wall, and I think this particular phase, and we can talk about the other phases later in the agenda, but this particular phase we've been playing from behind the entire time on our timeline. So we're calling in the assistance, the support where needed, and that's where that piece is. So a little bit of a longer answer, but I want to make sure that you also do understand the background sort of around it all, and that this is actually the second time, but in the end, it helped, and I think that the perseverance of the central office staff helped, and we, you know, you know, and we were right on our, you know, our timeline needs to ask to push. So we're where we need to be now. So.
Thank you.
Do we have anything else on vestibules? If not, do we have anything on the roof side at this time?
The only
No,
update on the roof is we got the letter last Friday, and Bain has it in the package that's out to bid right now.
Perfect.
We got a letter from the state to say we could.
Yeah. Yep, I had heard that. So that was good as well. So, okay, let's, do we have anything else on this item from anybody on this? Otherwise, we're going to move to the AC project piece. So, the good news on that, as has sort of been mentioned in general, is that we are now in our bid process, and that was a big step. It rolled by about a week, but and I see that Mark has got the calendar up, and so we're on a slightly modified calendar, but marching forward to get these things started on time. So does anybody want to do any, we get some updating just beyond that, where we're at? Maybe Amar?
Yeah, I mean, Mark has got the, yes, absolutely. So we are out to bid with the HVAC package for all three schools. Bids are, we have a pre-bid meeting that's scheduled for the 13th at 1:30. We're starting at Woods and then going from there to Osborne and then North Stratfield. We have been in communication with subcontractors, engaging them on a daily basis to make sure we have the coverage and entice, you know, bidding on these projects. Partly, as everybody mentioned, the vestibules are being bid as an ad alternate to these packages based on their prospective scope of work. So that's all on the street. Bids due are on the 28th currently. And we are leaving a little bit of room potentially for a bid extension. There's always a need. One or two bidders will ask for a bid extension. Depending, we might not extend all bids. We might extend a couple depending on the inquiry that we receive. We have been receiving some RFIs. I don't know if Jesse and his team, BL, has been engaged with RFIs and inquiries as it relates to the documents. So things are moving well so far. Like I said, we'll report again next Friday, which is post the pre-bid, and give the folks an update on that. We're still on track, if all goes well, with once we receive bids on the 28th. Our goal is the week of the 4th is to perform what we call scope reviews. Since we have about 9 packages, we feel reasonably confident that that week we'll accomplish that task for scope reviews, and obviously we'll be drafting. We've already started drafting the GMP, to be frank with you, and kind of developing that package and send it over to, we have to go through some internal meetings as it relates to the GMP itself, review before we forward it on to the town. Our goal is to get the GMP to you on or about the 20th, 21st of March. And obviously, there's a meeting obviously on the 22nd and the 29th. And the goal is which is what's in yellow, the 28th. Is really, that's the agenda where it has, the GMP has to accompany that for the April 1st meeting, I think, is the Board of Selectmen's approval of the GMP.
Correct.
Once that takes place, the following day, we issue trade contracts to the bidders. Obviously, there's an amendment to our contract that has to be drafted, and maybe Mark, at some point, maybe in early March, I would say, alert the law department to kind of might as well start drafting that amendment so it's ready to go and get executed. So that's so far seems to lay out well, and off to the races the first week of April. We've coordinated our on-site operations. Thank you, Sal, for providing the space that we need to operate and manage the projects within the schools themselves. And basically, that's the process. Is typically it's going to be a soft start. It will start with a demo contractor. They have to do what's called a 10-day notification to the health department because it does involve some hazmat removal. So we have to, it's a standard notification that they sent. And then we'll start, obviously, second shift. Once we receive bids and everything is looking good, my suggestion is probably the week of the 18th. I'll leave that up to the group here, is to have a follow-up sit down with the principals of each school, Sal, just to kind of give them an update where we are and kind of give them a heads up where we're going to mobilize, kind of coordinate some of those efforts. I know we had a meeting with them about a couple of weeks ago, but maybe if we target something for the week of the 18th, I'll follow your lead on that, what works best and where you see fit best.
The 18th of March or 18th of?
18th of March, I'm thinking,
Yeah,
after we
okay.
receive bids, after we go through the whole thing, everything is coming together, just telling them, hey, by the way, we're going to start
Yeah,
in 2
what-
weeks.
Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. Don't get upset. We'll be quiet. Yes, we'll do that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just the kind of, because we're going to be in their building for the next year and a half. We're going to be good neighbors. Other than that, that's kind of where we are. I don't know if I missed anything, Tim, you want to bring up?
No, that's pretty much it. We're tracking.
There is a couple of pieces. Just, I think we're all set with commissioning agent. Material testing. Is there going to be a need for material testing, Mark?
Yes,
We are.
there's special
Okay.
inspection, so I will have we'll get that out.
Yeah, for steel, selective stuff. Yes, you're right. We'll have some, a little bit of
Yep.
steel. I'm not sure what else. I mean, we're not really doing any earth.
Little bit of
other than-
concrete,
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Okay.
bit of-
Whatever.
little bit
It's
of
something-
asphalt, little bit.
It's minimal, I hope, which it sounds like it is. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
Perfect. Well, it's good to be in this phase now. So,
Yes.
just keep us, well, on our weeklies and then anything in between if something comes up. But it seems like we're now moving through that process nicely. So
Yep.
yeah, it's good to be there. Does anybody else have anything on the AC project or any questions for the team in this phase? Okay. So we're going to move next to the approvals portion. Okay. So
Mark
yeah,
Schweitzer,
just walk us.
it's
Yeah,
really
Mark's
only two
distributed them, but
invoices.
walk us through it.
Basically, just two invoices, one from BL that we split out between the HVAC projects and the vestibules for each of the three schools, and then Silver Petrocelli's January services. BL's is for January also. And most of the work for the HVAC was the hazmat. There was no design component to the invoice, and then the security vestibules is basically through DD of the final design.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on them? I know they were distributed earlier, so I assume everybody has reviewed them. So can you?
Nothing.
Yeah. Good. Can you bring up? Yeah. So the question's gonna be how we want to take these up vote-wise. Can you go back up to your main summary sheet? So there's 6.
Why don't we
Plus-
just do
plus the silver.
Silver, Petrocelli, and then BL as,
Kinda lump
as
them.
lumps. Lump them together.
Yeah, and maybe we just put in the wording, so they're invoice, yeah, you can put them all in the same.
It's all the same
Yeah, why don't-
invoice. It's just
Yeah, I was gonna
broken
say,
up.
yeah, and then just to be allocated, which will happen anyway. So yeah, as much as sometimes we really try to, it's nice to break these. I think that from an approvals, yeah, I think we can just split them by vendor. And maybe we put it to be allocated as per the, invoice summary or something like that. So do you want to make the BL one first and maybe add that wording just to be allocated or
Sure.
something along those lines? It's fine.
Sure. I make a motion to accept and approve BL's invoices for $123,544 dated 1/26/2024 to be allocated as per the breakdown of the different schools. Or something of
Say
that order.
schools and projects, I guess.
Schools and projects. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. We have a second on that. Assume that was Jeff. Second. So we'll go with Jeff as second. So do we have any discussion on these items? Anybody else here for the discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously passes, and we'll go with the next motion.
I'll make a motion to accept and approve Silver Petroselli's invoice dated 2/1/2024 in the amount of $1,600.
Do we have a second on that? Jeff?
Sorry, I was muted. I'll second that motion.
Right. Perfect. Do we have any discussion on this? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. I think the next one up is new business. So new business, and I have actually an email asking about this, and I'd actually like to bring this on the agenda just for a short discussion, and then we can add it on the agenda in more detail next week. But adding an item officially under new business would require a 2/3 vote, which I would like to do, so it's a standalone item. So I would like to add just a discussion about the phases 2 through 5 and our next steps as a committee now that 2 through 5 has been referred to our committee. So I'll make that motion. I'd like to make a motion to add discussion related to next steps for phases 2 through 5 and this committee's new role with them.
I'll second.
Okay. So we have a second on the motion. Do we have any discussion on adding this item? And adding the item would require a 2/3 vote to pass as a new business item on a regular meeting. So no further discussion. So we'll call the vote, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Passes unanimously. And all right, so it has been now referred to this committee, and we do need to figure out our next steps. I'd like to with notice and further discussion next week. But now that it's now that it's been referred to us, we do want to get this moving and get out sort our next steps on that end. Obviously, concrete numbers is very important. So yeah, Sal, I know he's trying to raise his hand. If you could even just give us a little update as to where central office is, because I think some things were in motion prior to
Right.
us, perhaps. So we're now there to try to be a part of it from the beginning.
Right. So the ultimate goal of asking for funding to do design was what you just said, to get concrete numbers for the capital planning. It caused some stress when we went in for second funding on this project, even though there were good reasons why we went in with a conceptual number on funding, which is not the normal course. So capital planning, Dave, you know better than anybody, we probably need to get to the point of good estimates by beginning of September so that we can start for the capital planning workshops. So my suggestion is that Colliers and Gilbane work a timeline backwards to where we would need design complete, and from that work back the building committee's schedule for soliciting quotations for design, all the things that go along with that.
Yep.
So you have your, so for the next meeting or the meeting after that, whenever you're going to discuss it, that you have your hurdles laid out in front of you, and we can track that pretty well to the conclusion of having good numbers by, say, September 1st or September 15th, whichever. You got better eyes on where that date moves a little bit from year to year, so you have a better handle on when we would need the numbers.
So what I'd like to do is also, I think it would be helpful to make sure that and this may look at sort of, the capital timelines and whatnot as well, and we can maybe try to look at how that may, phase out, and we can talk about that as a committee and then go back and look at the overall, schedules. But some of that is going to also involve a discussion that we should have about whether or not we're going to keep, there's some flexibility for these additional projects, and some, maybe not all, and we have to look at that too on the purchasing side. But vendor wise, part of it is with this committee, part of it wrapping up in the committee is keep some continuity across as we go from one to the next. But we may, if we start to look at trying to, double up on projects in different phases, we're going to have some questions about capacity. And in some instances, we may on certain phases want to discuss if we have, multiple vendors involved, and that is a, not so much as even just a purchasing, but I think what we want to do is we want to also just the existing groups sort of maybe just kind of wrap their arms around this and make sure you're going to get the question, right, from us, from a capacity perspective, right? Okay, you've got the capacity to now manage up if we start, rolling some of these phases at the same time on top of, we're not your only client. So, and if the answer is fine and we're all comfortable with it, continuity wise, that was kind of our hope in a lot of instances. I just bring that up sort of early, as I think that is going to be a discussion point. And yeah, so on the capital side, we're trying to figure out, these projects are big. We already know they're big. We are worried that the numbers are going to be even bigger potentially when we get real numbers. The sooner we have real numbers, or more realistic numbers, we can do even projections out in better shape. So that's really important to get to that point, and that's why some of this stuff's kind of been accelerated, seed money wise, right? So why don't we plan that this is an agenda item next week? It sounds like most of the other items are not going to be as needed to be more just sort of quicker updates. So let's see if maybe next week we can say that we're gonna spend more time kind of talking about phases 2 through 5 and sort of those next steps, and get ready to do that. And the other question, so that's what I think where we're at. Does anybody else have anything on it? I just want to make sure we covered it and knew that we're now kind of marching where, now that we're out to bid, then now in this next phase, we need to sort of pivot some of our attention onto it.
Do we have a high level timeline for phases 2 through 5? Is it a 1 year, 20 year? What is that?
I can
No,
pull.
presently it's on the waterfall for, let me, to answer that question, let me get to the waterfall. But I believe that we have a 1 year pause for all this design. Then it's Tomlinson. Then after that, it's one of the high schools, then the other high school, and then Walter Fitzgerald. It's 1 year after the other. There's just a pause in between phase 1 and phase 2, just to do the design and get all the numbers. So we have the whole long-term project fully developed and itemized for cost and tracking things like that. I think
there was some misunderstanding and confusion on the other boards, thinking that this building committee had it and didn't realize it just went, you just received the charge. Because apparently the funding, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, was approved by the RTM in November. So they thought
Yeah,
it was,
so I was gonna bring this up anyways. I didn't add it on as an agenda, because with the bid and some of these other updates, I knew it was gonna chew up, some of our time, and I figured next week was probably a better sort of, where we could really just focus on it. But
Fair
I
enough.
did receive, I mean, I did get a question from the superintendent, and I'm guessing, Jason, based on yours, that there was some other discussion out there, which is what landed the question. I think that people don't realize, yeah, that we just got it referred to us and are just getting to the point where we can now, and, part of it was to get some, the movement on it, and we asked for it. We made a motion sort of, we're certainly saying we're okay with it. I'm just trying to find,
Yeah,
on my
I'm seeing,
capital plan.
yeah, I'm looking at the long-term plan now. It's showing uh, um, Tomlinson in fiscal year 25-26, which is fiscal year 26.
Yeah, there's phase 2, 3.
Faith, which is Ludlow, and then Walter Fitzgerald. I'm sorry.
Ward.
Why don't I see the number for
Well,
Walter
FLA,
Fitzgerald?
yeah, Fairfield Ludlow High has a 2789, and then you've got a Walter Fitz is phase 4, and that's in 29, and then you've got Ward High School in 29 and 30. So you have we're looking at a 6-year sort of overall timeline. And remember, these are also, and this is we tried to stress this at the Board of Finance meeting on the overall capital plan. These are this is not always necessarily your approval timeline. This is partially tied to when the money would be bonded timeline, and it's sort of best understanding in the finance department on the town side as informed by their knowledge of and in concert with the Board of Ed. So that's where these numbers and what years they're slotted into. And I'll give you the example that at the meeting at the Board of Finance on Tuesday, there was a question about Dwight, and somebody saw Dwight really, one of the board members saw Dwight really far out, and was, I think it expressed concern that you're seeing, capital numbers in 2030. And I said, okay, even if tomorrow you said you're going to go and do Dwight, it's possible that we don't bond. First off, we'd have to have all the approvals for the seed money. So we already know that even if we wanted to do it right now, the seed money for Dwight would conceivably not even be voted through the boards until July at this timeline. Well, if it hasn't already been, it can't even get bonding, banned, anything. So even if it's July 1 and it's 12 months within fiscal 25 that things take place, which you can do, which people didn't understand, you don't have to bond it to start some of these things. You use money that the town already has and you bond it after, right, for some of this. But you have to have the appropriation by the date that we actually go for the bonding. We only go for the bonding once a year. So that says that now the money's going to get approved, and then you're in fiscal year 26's bonding cycle is when you might put some of that money out. So it has money for Dwight, for instance, in 26. Well, for that project, you're looking at probably 2 years at least before you hit a fiscal year where you'd even have an actual project, which would then drop money in. And then that project would take 3 years. So by the time you're making payments out, it's entirely possible that by the time we're done with our last tranche of bonded Dwight money, it might actually go into fiscal year, 31 for one reason or another, right? So that is something that we're just trying to also be more cautious about. The HVAC projects, assuming that we were actually on that other sort of timeline that we just were never going to make, already is actually sitting on roughly $10 million of bonded money, of which we'll probably be in this fiscal year have expended maybe about $1 million. So you can make the argument we unnecessarily bonded it. It's not as it's not as difficult as that because we make interest on it while we're sitting on it, we're paying, but you also have to be careful because certain types of projects you're not, there's some arbitrage rules on there where you're not supposed to profit on sitting on, so we have to be careful with that. So I think when you look at the timeline, it's not necessarily even going to be what time we approve or what time we start to move towards things. It's when we need to bond. I mean, it all has to work in concert of. So again, as you go back to the phases, there's a lot of moving pieces, and capital and the planning is a big, big piece of it. But I think there's a much bigger, it's a much tighter sort of look that's starting to happen on this cash flow piece and the way that that's structured, and that we need to, be cognizant of. So I gave some of that background. It takes a little further than the phases, but I'm trying to give that because we're trying to inform everybody of that background, because the more that everybody understands, the more that they, it helps, I think, everybody through the process. And I would encourage everybody to watch that section of the Board of Finance meeting from Tuesday, about halfway through, because it was actually, I think that gives some insight on the methodology. So if anybody else has anything on this item, otherwise we'll move it to the next move on from the new business item for this. So I've one more, just which I'm not going to bring up per se as a discussion. It's more of a notification. So I'm not going to add an item per se, but I just want to make sure. So I'd sent an email out to the group just saying use my Fairfield address for moving forward. You can strip off if you had my other address, just use my town account moving forward, as I am now employed by the town. And I think since that, take it another step further, at least for the next few months, I'm in the interim CFO role on the town side as well. So that then also says, as I am there, that we are also that I'm not yet. There's not technically a charter or rule that says I have to jump off of this, but we are starting to evaluate whether or not I'm ultimately going to end up exiting the committee. So that's a possibility, and we're trying to figure out where I sort of land and how that works. So I just wanted people to be sort of cognizant that that's one of my, make sure that if you didn't read the email, that I did send an email about that. And two, so just use my town account. And two, just make sure that you know the role, and then two, know that that there is a discussion. Although technically I'm allowed, but it may also come down to a capacity thing. So, yeah. So, but that's not saying it's happening yet, because I've sort of dug in and said HVAC is actually pretty near and dear to me. I really, really care about it and want to. So, so that is where I'm at right now. And if anybody else has anything, it's 10:10 and almost 10:10. And it's been a good, productive meeting. And we're going to focus next one on our previous item about the phases. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved. I make a motion to adjourn.
All right. We have a second
I'll
on
second
that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. We are adjourned at 10:08.